Hello, and welcome to Morph Minutes, presented by Studio M Financial. Studio M Financial exists to help you change the sound of your money through financial education and coaching. I'm your host, Katrena Pitts, instructor and financial coach. Hello, everybody, and welcome to a new episode of Morph Minutes with Studio M. I'm Katrena Pitts, financial coach to small business owners and the host of Morph Minutes. And we have a returning guest with us today. We have Julia DiMedici, who is an AFC candidate. She was with us, I don't know, Julia, maybe October, November, September, October, somewhere in there. And we did the balance transfer podcast. So she's back with us again. And today we're going to be talking about some retirement things. But before we get into that, I would like for Julia to just reintroduce herself to our audience and catch up on AFC candidacy. Julia and I met, just kind of recapping background. Julia and I met when we were going through the AFC coaching capabilities curriculum, I guess, or opportunity and getting hours for AFC candidacy to become an accredited financial coach. And so we met a little over a year ago, I guess, at this point. And we've just sort of, kept in touch along the way and done work on some of the scenarios that we had to work through over the summer. And we just had a really great rapport and just a great, we like talking to each other about personal finances and, other things and such. And so she's been on the podcast, but she is back. And so I just want to get a quick update on how your AFC candidacy is going, kind of where you are, where you're anticipating on finishing, and how is that going?
Well, thank you so much for having me again on the podcast. I'm very excited to be here. Since quite a few months ago when we initially did the first podcast together, as of this month, February of 2026, I had written it down. I have 562 experience/volunteer hours out of the 1,000 that I need.
Excellent.
I've heavily been focusing on exam prep. I was actually just chatting with a group today, maybe a study group in the future, we'll see, but with goals to ideally test within the next couple months. So we'll see if I can stay on schedule. Some personal life things are taking priorities. Right before this meeting, I was trying to prepare my own taxes. So if you haven't done your taxes yet, get ready because the days are dwindling. But yeah, it's kind of an update of what's going on in my life, and I'm excited to be here today and for a conversation.
Excellent. So you're over halfway done. And then hopefully we can get that wrapped up by the end of the year, maybe, or early 2027, somewhere in there.
Ideally before summertime, I would say, before the sunshine months, my favorite
But
time.
as in before summer 2026?
Oh, the hours, the exam I hope to have done before the summer. The hours, I will
Okay.
slowly approach that again and maybe do another coaching capability program.
Yeah, that's a good bucket of hours. That's awesome. I think, at least for me, and we'll move forward here in a second, but at least for me, mentally, once you get past that halfway point, it really does feel like, okay, the bulk is behind me, and mathematically that's true, right? Because you're more than 50%, so that makes sense. But you also, I at least felt like, okay, I know what I need to do. I'm halfway there, and so then you're going, what's the next 100 hours, or what's the next 200 hours that we can get, and sort of those milestones really start stacking up. And it goes by pretty quickly. So congratulations to you. As you know, I'm pulling for you. And waiting to celebrate when you get your fun AFC designation behind your name as well. So thank you for that. So for every podcast that I do, and really, if I have a guest, I don't do this with myself because I it's just would be weird. But I do a fun money game with whoever I have as a guest on the show. Or I think the other time it was kind of a getting to know you and other people. But for you, we get a money game because we're both AFCs or AFC candidates. So this is 6 questions and they're all true false. So there's no, choose A, B, C, D, or all of the above or whatever. There's just 6 questions, true or false. And I would say probably basic level. There's no like math you have to do in your head or any of this. So I will ask the question, you tell me true or false, and then maybe some of the rationale behind it, or I can read the rationale to you, whichever. So, ready?
I'm ready. I hope I get them all right.
Well, I mean, if you don't, then I can read the answer and the rationale behind it, and we'll both learn something. So no
Here.
pressure. All here to learn. Exactly. Okay, so question number one. Again, remember, all these are true or false. So question number one, carrying a balance on your credit card every month actually helps build your credit score faster.
False. Please don't do this.
Yes. Yes. Yes, that is true. It is false. So you get credit for the rationale behind it is you get credit for one-time payments and low utilization, or excuse me, on-time payments, which we all know that. Pay your credit card on time, and by having no balance, it shows that you have more available than what you're actually utilizing. So you do have a little bit more credit worthiness and a better risk. But it also goes on to say that carrying balances just piles on interest. So paying in full every month helps you win big, which is also true because we know that interest is tacked on to whatever the balance is that's on the credit card. So one for one. Question number two, ready?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. True or false? You need a lot of money to start investing in the stock market, at least five to $10,000.
False.
And why do you say false? You're right, but why do you say
I say
false?
false because I feel like you could start as little as $10. Put whatever you have in there. You don't need a
That's
set amount
exactly
of
right.
money.
That's exactly right. So they do what's called fractional shares. I think this is what you're alluding to, that you can buy parts of a share for as little as, and it says here as little as $10 or less. And so you can work up to the five to $10,000, but starting where you are, at least starting some ownership and investing. And then as the market grows and as your amount grows, you're starting to add and accumulate wealth. All right, two for two. I feel good about this. Number three, true or false? An emergency fund should ideally cover at least 3 to 6 months of living expenses.
True.
Perfect. It's your financial airbag, is what it says. Prevents turning job loss and or car repair into high interest debts. You can customize it for your life stage. So you and I both know this, kind of rule of thumb 3 to 6 months, but it really is that kind of buffer between you and life, right? So car repair, moving, relocation, job, pushing pause on on workflow or working and employment, you can at least float your life while you are trying to get back financially stable and unpause, the work pause or whatever, or get through the health situation or take care of your car without having to rely on unexpected credit. So, emergency fund. So, we're three for three. Again, I feel very good about this. Number four, ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. Number four, the stock market is way too risky for regular people saving for retirement. You're better off keeping everything in a savings account.
False. Don't keep everything in a savings account, but I would say be mindful of your age, where you're at in life, if you are
Hmm.
going to invest in the stock market. Just being mindful and seeing where you're at. And I think your time horizon is a big play in that.
Yeah, I think that's right. And even when we were going through the CFP, so the Certified Financial Planning curriculum, and even when I was probably onboarded at my previous job, one of the things that they talked about is that as you get older, whatever the mix is in those retirement accounts will change from, risky securities like stocks and those kinds of things into more of the fixed asset or fixed income, so bond market, just so you can protect your wealth. So it really turns from kind of wealth accumulation into wealth protection as you get older because you want your money to be there, right? At when it's time for you to need in retirement. So that makes sense. Okay, two more questions. True or false? Buying a house is always better than renting because you build equity instead of throwing money away, or instead of quote throwing money away, end quote.
Ooh, I feel like this is
Mm.
a tricky question. I want to say it depends on the person and their situation, but I do believe in like the true part of it, like investing in your own
Okay.
home, but maybe false because someone doesn't want to rent, or maybe that's just not in their lifestyle right now. And the way I think of that is I think of someone that comes to mind, and I know they would agree with me on this if I was discussing it with them. Some people enjoy having their landlord fix, like, you're responsible for repairs. And that's a lot of money. My bathroom flooded. That was a lot of money.
Yeah.
So I'll say, okay, I don't know what you put, but I'll say true.
Oh, okay. Well, the answer here is actually false. And I think because it says it's always better than renting, that sort of absolute piece of it. But I do agree that there are um, lifestyles are very different. And I would actually fall in that category of whomever it is that you were thinking of, the specific person you're thinking about is I don't want to fix the bathroom, right? I replace the light bulbs in my kitchen. That's fine. Or I'll buy a cord that will match with the socket for my dryer when I moved in. That's fine. But I don't want to fix the leaky sink, right? I don't want to fix the backyard thing. I don't want to fix the banister on my back. I don't want to do any of that. I'm not, I have a tool bag and I use them, but I'm not equipped for those kind of higher level repairs, nor do I want to hire somebody to come in to do it. So for me, it's, more efficient. And I honestly didn't have the work schedule to do that where I couldn't take off work and go, I'm sorry, the plumber is coming between the hours of, 9 a.m. and 4. And you're like, well, that's pretty much the entire day, buddy. So I don't have that set up, right? And there was nobody else in my home to cover those things either, right? So if I
That's
left, there
such a
wasn't
good
a self,
point.
right? So there are a lot of reasons why I do think there is value and that there is good, solid rationale behind renting. And I do think that there is solid rationale behind buying a house, right? If there's a place that you want to commit to, a neighborhood you want to live in, school systems that you want to commit to, a community that you want to be embedded in, I do think it makes sense. Yes, the investment piece, but I also, my only pushback to that would be, and I'm curious about your thoughts on this, but the reality is that you don't own that home when you have your mortgage, right? It's still owned by the bank, so you are still paying them to live there effectively, but you assume all the maintenance responsibility. They are assuming the risk that you're going to pay them back. But I also think the reality of how long people actually live in a home, I wonder what the real investment realization that they actually have. So 3 to 5 years, the longer that you live there, the more the house appreciates. But are people actually living in their house long enough to see that appreciation? Or is it really just sort of in theory until they actually come to sell it? But it may not be as much as you think. I don't know where I fall on that, but I do think there is an element, yes, of the investment piece of it. I do think the longer you have it and the more that you live there and the more that the asset grows, I do think there is value to it, that is an asset in your portfolio. I just don't know that we live in homes long enough to actually get the full true value from that. So I'm happy to be corrected, but those are sort of my thoughts on that.
No, I totally see where you're coming from, and it's funny that you bring this up because my spouse and I were just having this conversation since he's active duty military, his reenlistment window is coming up, and he has the benefit at this moment to potentially very high pick where we would like to go. And I've always said I wanted to live in Hawaii, but we would move very soon. And
Okay.
we've only been in our home for 1 year. And I've always said to him, if we are going to purchase a home together, we are either going to live in, at minimum, I would say 3 years. And I don't have anything really to back that up other than that seems like a good amount of time. I haven't actually done the math, but 1 year is, I would say 1 year to 2 years is definitely too short, or probably maybe a lot of people. Another thought is maybe a lot of people that aren't living in an area for a long time, they're renting that home out now. So
Mm,
they're kind of
yeah.
investing in property as they go. But
Yeah.
then on the other side, my mom's lived in my childhood home my whole entire life.
Okay.
And that's where she will stay, I think.
So we'll say.
So I guess it kind of depends, but I don't know. That's a good question. I wonder what the percentage is of people staying in one spot just forever in their forever home.
Yeah, I and I actually would wonder if that forever home is more. like that sort of retiree age, right? Because as your kids are, if you do have kids in a family, as you're adding to your family, your housing needs change. And as your kids leave the nest and go to college and have their own lives, your housing needs change. So even with that, you may not live, with the exception of your mom and to some degree my parents, because they lived in my childhood home for many, many years until they moved to where they are now. And they've lived there for probably close to 18 years or so, 18, 19 years now. But that aside, they changed when the family dynamic changed, right? So as you're sort of growing your family or your family is shrinking, your housing needs also change until everybody's out of the house and then you're retired. And so it really is, where do I want to live forever? And then that's probably, for 15, 20 years of your life. So it is interesting, but I think we should give grace. And I'm not saying this because I'm the person, but I do think we should give grace to people who are renting and not be as quick to suggest that they must purchase a home, that it is time for them to do that, like renting is throwing money away. There are some definite pros and advantages of renting. Is it expensive? Yes, I will absolutely grant you that. And there's probably aspects of renting that are more expensive than home ownership. But I do think there are also responsibilities that come with home ownership that are cost in time, cost in effort, cost in convenience that you also don't get when you are renting. So all that is, kind of people dependent. Okay, that was a very in-depth explanation. So the explanation is in some markets or life stages, renting wins due to flexibility, lower cost, or avoiding maintenance taxes. Homeownership isn't universal goal. So that's the explanation. Last question, and they will absolutely move on. So last question, true or false? Paying more than the minimum on your credit card debt can dramatically reduce the total interest you pay and shorten the payoff time.
True. Yes. Pay more than the minimum.
Yes. Yes. So extra payments attack principal fast, slashing interest and freeing up cash sooner. It's one of the best wealth accelerators around. You can do that with your credit card. You can do that with your car. I did that with my car payments, added, extra money every couple of weeks to it and knocked it down from, I think it was a 60 months, so a 5 year note, and I paid it off in right over 3 years by doing that. So I'm hoping to do that with the car that I have now. I just have to get a little bit more stable with a couple of things, but hoping that my plan is to start paying more on my vehicle so I can pay that off as well. So I don't have that hanging over my head, because while I love my car and I think he is great and wonderful and gets me from place to place, I don't really want to be paying for him for the next 5 years. So it works in, and it doesn't even take that much, right? An extra 25, an extra $50 a month, an extra $30 a month. It really does add up and it really eats into that interest a lot faster than just paying the minimum, or just paying the minimum payment for it, or I guess expected payment for it. It really does add up pretty quickly. And there are tools and calculators that kind of help you gauge how long it would take you to pay it off, with respect to how much extra you're paying, $45 compared to 75, it may knock off 3 or 4 extra months and it may be worth it or not. But finding that spot and budget dependent, finding that spot then and the amount that makes sense for you. Okay. So see, you mastered it 6 for 6. And that took a lot of discussion, a lot of time, but hopefully that was helpful for people who are learning and getting new things. So I thank you for indulging me in our game today, and you're the winner. So congratulations. If I had gold stars, I would give them out, but I don't. So let's hop right into it. So today's podcast that Julie and I were going to discuss today is we want to talk about retirement planning options for small business owners. And this is near and dear to me, one, because I am a small business owner, but also because I do understand that there are some considerations that we should have from if we're transitioning from employee, so W-2 worker, into that 1099 freelancer, small business owner, side hustle person, that don't things that are as an employee that don't carry with you when you become a small business owner. But what are the options? Because just because you start a small business doesn't mean that you are now not able to plan for your retirement, plan for your future, and sort of cover you and your family should you have one. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And I just want to be very, very clear on the front before we even dive into the conversation is this is not financial advice. This is educational. This is a discussion purposes only. So I am asking on behalf of me as financial coach, but also as me as proprietor of Studio and Financial, that whoever's listening to this truly does not take this as financial advice. This is things to think about, things to consider, data, information. Now you can then do your own research. You can come talk to me, go talk to Julia about your other options and dig into it as from a financial coaching perspective. But this is not to be construed as financial advice. This is really just for educational and discussion purposes only. So with that, let's talk about the two. So we have solo 401k and we have the simplified employee pension IRA or SEP IRA. So these are the two that we're going to talk about today. So hopping right into this is the solo 401k. And we broke this out into eligibility, contribution limits, and administration. So like the base information of where you as a small business owner would start making your decision. What do you even need to be? What's the criteria? So that funny criteria. I was mixing criteria and qualifications, and it came up criteria. So what is the criteria that you would have to maintain in order to be eligible for these particular retirement plans? So for solo 401k, the eligibility is self-employed business owners with no employees. Maybe you have your spouse is working for you. So if you, as the wife, are doing your gig and your husband is doing back office marketing or back office bookkeeping or stuff for you, there's a couple I'm thinking of right now that's in that same situation. She is doing her thing as an executive, kind of executive coach and speaker. He is doing all the back office work for her, in his spare time. So you can do that, or vice versa. The husband's out doing his gig and the wife is doing the administrative back office work as well. Either way. But it's no employees except maybe your spouse. That's part one. And then the contribution limits are up to $72,000. And that is combined between the employer contribution piece and the employee contribution. It is up to 72,000. And the breakdown for that, and Julie, you can chime in here at any point, but you're going to lead the SEP IRA, so I'm going to leave the harder part to you. But the contribution limits for that up to 72,000. But the breakdown of that is because it's a 401k, they abide by the same contribution limits for 2026. So that 24,500 is the employee elected contribution, and then the balance of that up to the 72,000 would be up to the employer. But that contribution is based on a percentage of their net self-employment income. So up to 25% of that. So even if the employee doesn't do the full 24/5, the employer can only go up to 25% of the net self-employment income tax. But both combined cannot be greater than 72,000 unless there is a caveat to that. And we know with the catch up, just like we have with your 401k that you have with your employer as a W-2 employee, the same thing here as a small business owner. If you are over the age of 50, your catch up amount for 2026 is 8,000. But they also did this with the Secure Act, and I didn't dig into a lot of the research for this because it's lengthy and a lot of parts and pieces to the Secure Act. But one of the parts that's in it is this sort of small window of additional catch up. So if you're between the ages of 60 and 63, that you're right on that cusp of actual retirement eligibility for 67, 65 or 67. I think everybody at this point is probably in that 67 range. I think all the people that were 65, I think I think we're beyond that age, right? Like because there's a year, I forget the Social Security year where it will tell you if you're born before this particular year, your eligibility for retirement and Social Security is 65. I think all of those people are that. I think we're all squarely in that 67 age range. Wouldn't you agree with that or disagree?
I would agree.
So if you are approaching that, they will give you that 60 to 63 timeline to add extra. So $11,250. That was the point I was getting to. That if you are like double catching up, they give you a small window of 3 years in order to really kind of double down. It's an extra $3,250, but it can be very, very meaningful as you are trying to, if you got to start with retirement, they're giving you the opportunity to make up for it on the back end if we missed it on the front end and to get you ready for retirement for your normal retirement age. That's the contribution limits. Now the administration for that is actually pretty simple. There's no minimum to open the account, and there's could be little to no fees as well for the administration piece of it. It's going to be dependent on the vendor that you have, and there's different places, Charles Schwab, Fidelity, Vanguard are kind of the top three that come to mind that do have and offer these particular retirement investment products. So checking with them, really kind of getting the details of their plan of what you can invest in. So if it's mutual funds or stocks, ETFs, any sort of alternative like crypto, those kinds of things, it's really going to be plan dependent based upon the provider. But those are things to think about. So very low touch administration. And I don't want to forget this part because the IRS is a part of a lot of things in our lives, from taxes. I think Julie mentioned doing our taxes. I did mine a couple of weeks ago, and that was a bear as a small business owner. But for this purpose and for this plan, there is no IRS reporting that is required. But you do need to keep the paperwork and the documentation, right? And just as from an administrative perspective, keep all the documents for the plan, the contributions, all those different things on site, and retain those for as long as humanly possible. But there is something that you have to report to the IRS. So that's the solo 401k. So eligibility, you, no employees, maybe a spouse. And then contribution limits, $72,000 combined between you as the employer and you as the employee. So you can do for both sides. So if it was me, I could contribute as the employer, as the owner, but I could also contribute as the employee, but up to $72,000. If I'm over the age of 50, I have a catch up for that 8,000. If I'm 60 to 63, I catch up as 11,250 and or 11,250. And then for administrative purposes, dependent upon the provider for what you can invest in, but then also low touch in the sense of minimum to open, minimum to administrate, and low requirements in reporting to the IRS. So that's a solo 401k. Julie is going to walk us through this SEP IRA because, one, she's had experience with this. So I'm actually eager to learn kind of what her experience with this has been at her own organization. But also she can kind of give a little more beyond some of the tactical things. So eligibility, contribution limits, and administration. So Julie, take the floor and talk about the SEP IRA for us. So first of all, let's start at eligibility. Let's start there. We'll be
Eligibility.
organized with this thing. Let's start at eligibility and work our way through the different points
Okay.
of it. So
Sounds
eligibility.
good. Keep me on track then. So with eligibility for the SEP IRA, Simplified Employee Pension Plan, it is going to be for tax year 2026. I had to look it up because it briefly changed. Eligibility for this plan, well, kind of backing it up a little bit, this is going to be available for this retirement plan, small business owners, and it's typically, you're going to have employees, so small business owner, and it's typically going to be no more than 10 employees
Okay.
working at the business. I would say I work at a small business with a total of 6 employees, and my employer has been generous enough to give and implement a SEP IRA plan. And as going to the employee eligibility side, if you want me to jump into that,
Yeah.
employees that are working at your business, per the IRS's rules, they must be allowed, if you have one implemented, they must be allowed to participate if they're 21 years or older, earn at least $800 in the tax year, and the $800 is for 2026. For
Okay.
2025, it was $750, and you have to have worked at the business at least 3 of the 5 last years. And the IRS says that you can choose less restrictive rules for this plan, but you cannot make them more strict. And an example, my job, they're less restrictive with the plan. So we had
Okay.
to go in and implement our own plan document. The IRS, kind of similar to the solo 401k, there is a document on their website that you can fill out. I believe it's Form 5305, and it
Okay.
outlines all the IRS's requirements. So if you're going to stick with their rules, you can go ahead and fill out that form. You don't need to file it with them, but you're going to fill it out and you're going to keep it on file at the business somewhere safe so you have record of it. And our rules are less strict, so lucky me, I was able to actually get a contribution for the SEP IRA this year, and I had only worked there for a little over 1 year so far. So
Okay.
if we went with the more restrictive rules, I would not have qualified. Um,
Right.
so that's kind of a little overview of who can participate and
Okay.
who this retirement plan is kind of catered towards, the small businesses. Um,
So one quick question, sort of on on the less restrictive but not more restrictive. So if we went the more restrictive, which would be a no-no, it would be you would have to work there 5 of the last 5 years, right? Versus 3 of the last 5 years as their sort of base model, right? Or you would have to earn a $1,000 or $1,500 versus this 800 that would be for 2026, right? Versus as long as you make 350, you're good. We we're letting because that lets more people participate is the point of that,
exactly.
right? Because you
Absolutely
want
right.
to allow that to be part of your entire, or at least the bulk of your workforce as a benefit versus a very select few people. And there's no real motivation for them to stick around either if it's a small group of people that only get access to it. So I can understand that. But practically, I just kind of wanted to point out what the other side of it would be, like the can't do's, what you can do, less restrictive, but what you can't do on the more restrictive piece of it. But that's all I'll say about that. So eligibility. So next point, I will turn it back over to you.
All right, moving into, yes, and that was an excellent point to bring up. Moving into contribution limits
Mhm.
for a SEP IRA, and I want to point out a core rule for the SEP IRA. If if you as a business owner, you contribute in a given year, let's say you did it for 2025, you need to contribute the same percentage of pay to every eligible employee, and that is the max you can do is 25% of compensation. This is the same for 2025 and 2026, and the
Okay.
maximum for 2026 contribution limit is $72,000 per person. Um, so let's say that you decide as a business owner, and this is an important point, I think, and it could be looked as a disadvantage, I would say. If you decide, hey, I'm the business owner, I have 3 employees, I want 25% this year to go into my SEP IRA of my compensation this year. You need to realize that all the other employees will also receive that percentage of their income. So maybe in your mind, you're thinking, oh, I don't want to give everyone that much. You are required. It is an IRS rule. You need to give the same percentage for everyone. But on the other hand, a benefit of the plan is that you can be flexible. So this flexibility, it's a huge advantage for business owners with variable income. So maybe this past year, the business was doing wonderful, very profitable. You did 25% for everyone. The next year, not so great, you're going to do 15% for everyone. And you could even do 0%. 1 year, I mean, you're going to have to tell your employees, and that's just a part of being a business owner. I would say
Right.
you're going to have to um, inform them of that, unfortunately, but you could say 0% for that year. So,
So sorry, I cut you off. Finish
no,
your
you're
thought, and then I'll ask my question. Okay, so kind of to that point is when when do you need to notify? I guess, yeah. Let me start with this question. When do you need to notify your team that you are contributing to their account? Because I think one of the things that we've talked about, just sort of offline, is it is based on essentially what's in that W-2 wages that you've earned, right? Which you don't really get that until the tax season of that following year, right? So we won't really know that until tax season 2027, what the contribution would be for 2026, right? Until we know the final total wages that the individuals have earned, right? So when do you have to actually notify your team that they are going to have contributions for 2026? Is that at the time that the tax information is done, or is it at the beginning of 2026? Because kind of to your point is if it's based on income and revenue, you don't actually know that until the year is over, right? So I assume, and you can correct me, is notifying your team of what the percentage would be around that same time that you are closing out your books and tax season is upon you and W-2s and stuff are being generated. But you can correct me if I'm wrong. I really don't know the answer to that question. It's not a
No,
leading question. I really don't know the answer.
no, that is a good question, and I don't know the answer off the top of my head because it kind of, I didn't, I didn't think about that because
I didn't
the,
either until now.
the business owner told me, and they said, we're going to be doing SEP IRA contributions this year. You're basically going to be in charge of, just dispersing, figuring this out, letting everyone know. But I know for a fact that I needed W-2s needed to be completed. So January, not, yes, January 31st,
Hmm.
needed to be distributed to everyone. So it would be based off of that income. So if you have it done earlier, that's wonderful. But I, you could figure out I don't see why not. I would say, I don't know. I don't want to say anything wrong. I'm just kind of had the example and experience that I've actually went through, but I know for a fact it depends on, your small business's tax schedule and when your deadline is, which the small business I work at, they use April 15th.
Okay.
Because they are an S corporation, they decide to use April 15th. So I needed to have everything, on file, squared away, and funds dispersed before April 15th. And then your CPA is probably going to want, I sent it all to the CPA, all the distribution amounts and stuff along those lines so they could have it on record because as a small business owner, this is a tax benefit, right? So
Right.
that's kind of where I'm at with that, but that's a good question.
No, that would make sense. And you are allowed to, and we'll move on here. I didn't want to, that was an unfair question I asked because it just popped into my head as you were talking. So I blurted it out. So it was kind of unfair. But um, even when you're doing your taxes, like, H&R Block or TaxSlayer or, Intuit, whatever that you're using, it will ask you if you, even as the individual, plan on making any contributions to your 401k in this 2026, even though we're doing it for tax season 2025. They'll even ask you, are you going to add any other funds into your retirement account, right? Before the April 25th deadline. So I think there is some wiggle room on that one. I won't say wiggle room, but I do think that deadline is extended, kind of what you were talking about, of all the W-2 wages information needs to be in, and then you make your declaration of where you are, what you're going to contribute, and it is effective for that 2025 tax season, or in our case, 2026 tax season, because that's where we are right now. So I'll look that one up as well, but it just kind of, or if there's any sort of guidelines and best practices for that, because as a small business owner, something that I would want to know personally, um, of what is required and what information I would need to distribute to my team for contributions should I set up. Well, I would have to do the separate. I couldn't do the solo 401k if I had a team, but should that be the choice for retirement plans that we would have, that would be one of the things that I would like to know. So I will make the note to take that and do that research for that because I am a little curious about it. So for same percentage for contribution limit. So let's talk about the administration of this, and then we do want to talk briefly about a scenario, and we may not go as deeply into the scenario, but just for time purposes, but we'll see where we are. But let's talk about the administration of the actual SEP IRA. If we're talking IRS filings, what information would need to be done. If I know you've mentioned that you don't have to do the tax form 50, 35, or whatever it was that you rattled off, but no IRS filing for it, or what's the you mentioned flexibility, and maybe that was you going over the administrative piece of. Is there anything else that you wanted to add to that?
No, there's a little bit more that I can add in. So
Okay.
it is pretty simple, pretty straightforward, at very low cost. You can go ahead and you can choose a provider if you'd like, whether that be like Vanguard or Fidelity. And the business owner can go and they can open up you could probably do it online, honestly, call in and open up these accounts for your employees because you're going to need the account information for
Hmm.
distributing the funds, ACH it into their account. and you'll need that in there. But other than that, it's pretty straightforward. You just need to make sure all the information is accurate. T's are crossed, I's are dotted, but it's kind of up to the employer, I would say, to decide where they want to open it. And
Right.
then once the employer contributes into it, you are fully vested in those funds, because it's just like kind of a lump sum payment that you're getting, and then the employee can invest those funds, with the options that are provided in the, let's say, the Fidelity account that your employer set up for you.
And I think before we move on to the scenario, no matter which one that you choose, the solo 401k or the SEP IRA, I think that the purpose of this is to make it as least difficult as possible for the small business owner, because they want to incentivize you to be able to offer these plans to your employees and for yourself. So the more challenging, more difficult that the IRS or any sort of governing bodies makes it, or even the providers, right? So if you're looking at Fidelity or Vanguard or Charles Schwab or whatever ones that we've mentioned, if they make it more difficult, then you are less inclined as a business owner to even bother with it, right? It's not only costing me, but now it's costing me time and money and energy, all these different things. So I think the benefit of this is it's sort of entry level to a benefit that you can offer to your team and to your staff, which I actually think is a good thing, because you, you want to reward and retain people for really, in some ways, honestly, kind of taking a risk on a small business, right? You're not a Fortune 500 who is, that sort of too big to fail kind of mentality. You're one of 10,000 employees, which I was. I worked for a very large company before I broke off and did my own thing. And I was one of 30,000. So that, I mean, there was tons and tons of us. And that gets really, really challenging, really, really difficult. There's not a lot of risk that you're taking as an employee, right? But really, as if you're an employee at a small business, you kind of are taking the risk of, risk of that they're going to be successful, risk they're going to be able to, feed you and your family. So I do think it is a great way to reward you taking a risk on their small business and their dream, the different things that you're trying to do, as a business owner. So the less obstacles you can put and less barriers that you can put for that business owner, I do think it is better. You have more people uh, truly, figuratively, and literally buying into that product and offering it to their team and supporting that as well. So the two options, like you said, were solo 401k and then SEP IRA. So just one quick, let's talk a little bit about our scenario with Mark and Elena, and we will motor through this pretty quickly, because we wanted to take that information, but we also wanted to, because at the heart, honestly, and Julia may agree with this or not, but at the heart of being an AFC is education. So we want to take these big topics and personal finance topics, but really bring it down to your actual scenario. What does it really look like for your life? What does paying off debt really look like for you? There's all these best practices and guidelines that we go, oh, 3 to 6 months or avalanche or snowball or whatever. But your average person who's coming to you for insights is going to go, that's great. What does that mean for me? How does that actually apply to my own life? And what factors do I really need to consider before I start making choices for my personal finances? So similarly here, I do think that as a heart of an AFC is we try to take those concepts and precepts and really take that and walk you through how that can apply to you, so that you as the individual, business owner or not, can make really good decisions for your personal finances. So, and again, I think Julia would agree with that perspective as well. So I think that's what resonated with me becoming an AFC versus other designations. So Mark and Elena, and we'll take like 5 minutes to go through this, but Mark and Elena. So I'm going to read the scenario and then we're going to talk through a couple of questions, and maybe I will be sort of the questioner and get Julia's expertise on this one. So Mark and Elena. So Mark is 52 and Elena is 47. They are married and they filing jointly for their taxes. Their combined household income is $178,000. Elena works for a mid-sized company and contributes to her employer's traditional 401k plan. Mark owns a small consulting business as a sole proprietor. He wants to set up his own retirement plan and is weighing a SEP IRA against a 401k. So here's some questions that I would ask you if Mark and Elaine, if I was Mark and Elaine representing them, there's some questions I would ask you. So does do we understand whether or not Mark has employees based upon this scenario?
Mark owns a small consulting business.
He's just a sole prop, so sole proprietor. My guess is no.
I, I would also agree now.
So if he has no employees, then that probably puts him in one category already kind of off the jump. So the solo 401k is probably going to be his jam, but let's kind of dig a little bit deeper.
Okay.
Um, they are within the earnings ceiling because I think the earnings ceiling is like $300,000 or something. So they're within that by good margin.
Okay.
Um, Also true that Elena works for a mid-sized company, so her contributions to that are separate from Mark's. This is really just what Mark wants to do for his retirement and for his company. Now, the question I would also sort of want to bear it out and to figure out which direction is, even though Mark is a sole proprietor now, does he plan to hire help in the immediate future? Does he plan on having full-time staff come on board with him, which means it's now not just him, but now it's him plus employees? That's something that I would want to know, right? So if that's the case, would you like, what are your thoughts on, and I don't even know, this is also probably an unfair question I'm going to ask you again, but the thoughts on if he started with a solo 401k for himself, is it hard to then transfer to a different retirement plan because you're starting to add people, or would it be better for him to sort of plan for the future, or is that even possible? I don't even know the answer to this question. I probably should know the answer to this question,
This is
or
a
at
good
least
question, though.
right? Is like, can he, if he's a sole proprietor and has no employees, can he even do the SEP IRA with the intent that I'm adding people to it? I don't have any employees now, but I'm adding people to it and have that plan be his starting point so that he's already ready when people are coming. Again, I probably should look that up, but it just sort of dawned on me at this point of what would even be the complexities of starting with one plan and then moving to another. But there's things that I would want to know as a person that's coaching them through this. But what are the things that you would want to know as you're coaching them through it?
Well, we kind of answered that he currently has no employees, so I think that would be number one, and then kind of going from there and walking through the solo 401k.
Mhm.
You kind of asked the main questions that I would ask initially.
Sorry about that.
No, you were good. I'm trying to think if there was something else off the top of my head. Or Mark. Well, he is one thing. Okay, this had crossed my mind. His age,
Mm,
I was kind of thinking about. He's 52,
yeah.
so I would ask him what he's been doing up until this point, if he's been investing elsewhere in his retirement. That kind of doesn't have to do with this, but he is 52, so catch-up contributions might be important to him. So I think
Yeah.
that's something that we would discuss, and I think that's heavily more available with the solo 401k, um, where he can catch up. So that's kind of a thought that I had. I don't know if you have any additional input on that.
No, that's I think that is a good thought because would he be inclined to if he had a 401k at a prior employee or excuse me at a prior employer, would he roll that over into whatever this plan is, or at least has a base amount in there versus starting from zero, but then also taking advantage of the catch up to make sure that he contributes what is allowed, right? Get the maximum opportunity and the maximum investment amount allowed for his contribution. So no, I think the age thing is really helpful because that's $8,000 that he could be privy or that he could include as well because he's over the age of 50. So again, like employee size, plan for the future, age, separate the fact that he is separate from his wife's 401k means that they're not having to spread that total contribution across multiple 401ks because they're not connected to it, which would eat into it, which means they would be able to contribute less, right? Because you're taking hers and his, but they can get the max for both of theirs. So I do think those are important things to consider. And ultimately, where does Mark kind of see his business going? Probably in the next months to 2 years would really probably be the determining factor of if he just stays with the sole prop and stays with the solo 401k because he doesn't anticipate adding any employees to it. He would just be himself, which would automatically mean SEP may not be the thing for him. Plus, I also think just the maximum that you can actually contribute, right, would probably, because you're just, at least with the solo prop, he can do it as the employer and employee. The SEP IRA, he's only doing it, he can only do it as the employer. He does not have an employee option or that much of an employee option. So things to think about and to consider. No hard answers on that one. But I do think there's some guidance that we can give to Mark as he's making his decision and providing with the resources that would help him do that. So with that, I think, I'm going to ask you, Julie, do you have any sort of final thoughts before I close this out and get us out of here for this episode of Morph Minutes? Any final thoughts?
Final thoughts. I mean, I think they're both, when it comes down to it, they're both wonderful options. They both have, tax advantages, and it's a wonderful thing. As an employee, it is a wonderful thing, and you touch base on this, that you can offer a SEP IRA at least to your employees to, retain people. And I like the point that you brought up about, it is a small business and they're kind of investing in you and they're trusting you to put food on the table for them, essentially. So, yeah.
Yes. So now you have it, folks. Solo 401k versus a SEP IRA, and which one works and makes the most sense for you. So I'm going to close this out for that. Thank you, Julia. Looking at you, thank you for joining us today again for another episode of Morph Minutes. Always delightful to have you, and I'll definitely have you back here very, very soon for another fun conversation on personal finances. And we'll figure the topic out at a later date, but I'm looking forward to our next conversation. But I think most importantly, thank you for listening. Thank you for even taking time out of your schedule to listen to the things that we have to say. And hopefully if we've raised questions, we've raised good questions for you. And I will actually put in the comments below, I'm just letting everybody know, I'll put a comment in the comments, I will put a chart that gives the summary between the two plans that we talked about: eligibility, contributions, loan opportunities, that kind of summarize some of the things that we have talked about. It's not going to be comprehensive because we can't do all the things for the plans, but sort of those high level points, definitely want to bring those to light. So I'll put those in the comments for you all. Social media as well, if you want to connect with us at Studio M or me also at Studio M. I'll put the information there as well. And again, thank you so much for your time to listen to us. Hopefully it's been helpful. We want to hear from you. Please comment, like it, subscribe to it, whichever makes you most comfortable. And we will, we'll be doing this again down the road here very, very soon. So keep in touch. And if you want to be a part of our newsletter, please also let me know. Email me. I'll put the email in the comments as well. That will give you information twice a month on different people and that I'm connected with, different business owners for our partner corner, but then also nonprofits or organizations that are doing work in the community for our community spotlight as well, because we firmly believe in community engagement here and volunteerism and supporting and being a part of our community however we can, both financially, but with also our hands and our brains and our efforts and our attention. So I'm going to officially call it over and done with for this episode of Morph Minutes. Again, I'm Katrena from Studio M, financial coach to small business owners. And until we meet, keep working on the change.
We at Studio M Financial appreciate you for taking time out of your day to listen to us. If you have any comments or questions related to today's content, please feel free to send those our way. The email address is letstalk@studiomfinancial.net, or you can connect with us on social media. If you would like to be notified of future podcasts, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel, Studio M Financial. As always, until we meet, keep working on the change.